terrible lie. Dakota, this one's your favorite, I think. Big snake. Adam and Eve lived happily together in their beautiful new home, and everything was perfect for a while, until the day when everything went wrong. God had a horrible enemy, and his name was Satan. That's the devil. Satan had once been the most beautiful angel, but he didn't want to be just an angel. He wanted to be God. Ooh. He's going to get into that snake. He grew proud and evil and full of hate, and God had to send him out of heaven. Satan was seething with anger and looking for a way to hurt God. He wanted to stop God's plan and stop his love story right there. So he disguised himself as a snake and waited in the garden. Dun, dun, dun. Now, God had given Adam and Eve only one rule. There they are over there behind that bush. You see them? Don't eat the fruit of that tree, God told them, because if you do, you'll think you know everything. Then you'll stop trusting me. And then death and sadness and tears will come. God told them not to eat from that tree. Oh, there he is. You see, God knew that if they ate the fruit, they would think they didn't need him, and that they would try to make themselves happy without him. But God knew that there was no such thing as happiness without him, and life without him wouldn't be a life at all. As soon as the snake saw his chance, he slithered silently up to Eve. Does God really love you? The serpent whispered. If he does, why would he not let you eat the nice, juicy, delicious fruit? Poor you. Perhaps God doesn't want you to be happy. Think Eve is believing him? The snake's words hissed into her ears and sunk down and deep into her heart like poison. Does God love me? Eve wondered. Suddenly she didn't know anymore. Just trust me, the serpent whispered. You don't need God. Only one small taste, that's all. And you'll be happier than you could ever dream. Eve picked the fruit and ate some. And Adam ate some too. And a terrible lie came into the world, and it would never leave. It would live on in every human heart, whispering to every one of God's children, God doesn't love me. That is the terrible lie. And it wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare. The dove flew from Adam's hand. A deer darted into the thicket. It was as if they were frightened by something. A chill was in the air. Something strange was happening. They had always been naked, but now they felt naked and wrong. And they didn't want anyone to see them, so they hid. Later that evening, as God was taking his walk, he called to them, Children? Usually Adam and Eve loved to hear God's voice, and they would run to him. But this time they ran away from him and hid in the shadows. Where are you? God called. Hiding, Adam said. We're afraid of you. In the Bible it says that Adam and Eve actually made clothes for themselves out of leaves, and that's how they covered themselves up, because they were embarrassed that they were naked. Hiding, Adam said. We're afraid of you. Did you eat the fruit I told you not to eat? God asked them. Adam said, Eve made me do it. What have you done? God asked. Eve said, That serpent made me do it. Terrible pain came into God's heart. His children hadn't just broken one rule. They'd broken God's heart. They'd broken his wonderful relationship with wonderful relationship with him. And now he knew everything else would break. God's creation would start to unravel, to come undone, and to go wrong. From now on, everything would die, and even though it was all supposed to last forever, that's when all the bad things started coming into the world. Sickness and death, and what the Bible calls pestilence. Stuff like mosquitoes and flies and annoying, awful things. People being mean to each other, killing each other even. Awful stuff. Someday that's all gonna go away. Because of somebody, or you know who it is, right? Jesus. You see, sin had come into God's perfect world, and it would never leave. God's children would always be running away from him and hiding in the dark, and their hearts would break now and never work properly again. God couldn't let his children live forever, not in such pain, not without him. There was only one way to protect them. You will have to leave the garden now, God told his children, his eyes filling with tears. This is no longer your true home. It's not the place for you anymore. But But before they left the garden, God made clothes for his children to cover them. He gently clothed them and sent them on their way on a long, long journey out of the garden and out of their home. Well, in another story, it would all be over, and that would have been the end. Think that was the end? No. But not in this story. God loved his children too much to let the story end there. Even though he knew he would suffer, God had a plan, a magnificent dream. One day he would get his children back. One day he would make their world perfect, their perfect home again. And one day he would wipe every tear away from their eyes. Remember the new earth that God's making? And the new Jerusalem, the city is going to come down from heaven, and God's going to make everything perfect again. See, you see, no matter what, in spite of everything, God will love his children with a never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. And though they would forget him and run from him, deep in their hearts, God's children would miss him always and long for him, and lost children yearning for their home. Before they left the garden, God whispered a promise to Adam and Eve. It will not always be so. I will come and rescue you. And when I do, I'm going to do battle against the snake to get rid of the sin and the dark and the sadness that you let in. I'm coming back for you. And he would one day. God himself would come. What was his name? Jesus. He's going to wipe all tears from our eyes.